reacting to the noise or reading the signal. Because every leader hears things, complaints in the hallway, frustrations after the meeting, pushback about decisions. The instinct is often to respond immediately or to shut down completely. But strong leaders understand that culture is always communicating, and the outcome we're driving toward is this. Do you understand what's really happening in your building and how influence actually works? I'd like to take a moment and introduce two experienced leaders who have firsthand experience with such things. Welcome LaKinda Houston and Lori Gregory. Lori Gregory and LaKinda Houston previously led a school together and now both lead schools separately on their own. So they've experienced culture, influence, and leadership dynamics both as partners and as principals carrying the weight of these decisions independently. Lori and LaKinda, I'm really glad that you're here. Why don't you take a moment to introduce yourselves? LaKinda, let's start with you.
Thank you for having us, Dr. Gripado. I am so pleased to be here. I am the principal here at Hamilton Elementary. And as you stated, also I was Lori's assistant principal at Lewis and Clark for a couple years. Here at Hamilton Elementary, we are thriving and we have about 302 students and we are very diverse. We are heavy, about 65% with Hispanic or Latina children, and most of those students are bilingual. We have about 54 staff members, 25 certified, and the rest are support staff. So a lot of children and also adults to talk about here when we talk about culture in the building.
Awesome, thank you. Lori?
My name is Lori Gregory, and I'm finishing up my 9th year here at Lewis and Clark. I was honored to be the assistant principal for my first 2 years, and as that principal transitioned to another school site, I was able to remain here. So I'm wrapping up my 7th year here as the principal. And we've really had a great 7 years, 9 years of building those relationships with staff, getting to know people, and building that trust. Likewise, our school is pretty similar to Hamilton. We have over 54% Hispanic students who are bilingual as well. And we have about 440 students, so we have about 65 staff members. So navigating relationships and building that culture and climate with staff and students every day.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. So, all right, let me throw this scenario at you. You're in the moment, working busily in the building, working up and down the hallways, talking to teachers, going in classrooms, and you just start to hear a few rumblings that teachers or staff members are frustrated with the leadership decisions. Maybe someone tells you directly, maybe you accidentally overhear something in passing, but now you're at a crossroads. You have to decide, do I address this publicly? Do I ignore it? Do I confront it directly? This is a reacting to the noise versus reading the signal moment. And how you respond shapes both your credibility and your understanding of the culture that you're leading. So when you hear that situation, what stands out to each of you?
I think to me, something that you're hearing in passing, and one of the things that I always want to lead with and strive to lead with is staying curious and really listening and looking for what is the real concern. Is it about the decision? Is it about the process that's happening? Is it about the impact that teachers are going to feel? And maybe is there a pattern across certain staff members or grade level team? Is that where is the complaint coming from is the first thing that I'm going to try to get to. And just really just staying curious is the first thing I'm going to do.
I would agree with that. I think it is very important to stay curious and ask those questions instead of becoming very defensive with it. It's important to listen to their feedback, because once we hear that feedback, it's a data point for us, really. When we hear some of those grumblings, we want to consider, is this somebody venting a frustration? Is it a trend? Is it specific to a situation? What is the root issue here? Is that something that I really do need to address staff-wide, or is it something that maybe a quick explanation could solve the problem? Because there are a lot of things behind the scenes and a lot of things at a district level that teachers might not understand. But the other perspective that I always try to keep in the forefront of my mind is what it felt like when I was a classroom teacher. I often go back to that of how would I have felt if I was in this situation? Because if I can keep that in the front of my mind, it helps me relate to their experience. And if it's just a frustration and they need to vent, that's completely different as opposed to an actual problem. Like there might be some kind of confusion with procedures that maybe we do need to have a building-wide reset and figure out what the problem was, address the issue that way.
Nice. So let's just say the word out loud. We don't often actually name it, but it would fall under the category of gossip, right? When we're hearing rumblings or whisperings in the hall. What do you think newer leaders misunderstand about gossip and staff frustration?
I think a new leader often will misunderstand gossip. Sometimes, like Lori was saying, sometimes it is just truly venting, and there are things that teachers need to talk about just to get clear the air and get off their chest and just to say. And then I think the difference in gossip is there's harm. And when harm is being done and when it becomes harmful and it's damaging someone's reputation, if you're spreading false information, if it's targeted to one individual and creating a hostile environment here or excluding, it could even just be excluding someone, then it has to be handled directly and also privately. It's not something that you would take to all of staff. You need to go directly to the people who is being affected by it and then also who is spreading that gossip.
I think that an effective leader is not going to ignore the gossip necessarily, but you don't want to police everything either. Back to what I was saying, sometimes it can be a venting of some sort, but there's two types of gossip probably and one type you should really get into to understand. Is this confusion about expectations? Is this a feeling of unfairness or burnout or anything like that? And that is something that is unofficial feedback that the leader can take in and figure out how can we help solve this. But like LaKinda was saying, if it's attacking somebody's character or spreading rumors of some sort, that's something that does need to be dealt with. I know there was a time when LaKinda and I were working together when it was our first or second year, and there was a little bit of negativity spreading, and we had that point where we did call together a meeting and just say, there are some negative people around or spreading some negative thoughts, and your colleagues are tired of it. Because other teachers would come to both of us and be like, man, this is really bothering me that they're saying these things. And that was the one and only time that I really remember that we addressed it staff-wide, and it was more of, your colleagues are frustrated by this and tired of hearing it. And that's when we started really being able to tie things into our staff charter. We take that charter very seriously. It's a living document. We bring it up at faculty meetings, and having staff identify the way they want to feel in our building and saying, this is not my responsibility. This is all of our responsibility as a collective. And so it helps us be able to really trust in that process. And then when things like gossip do arise, it's kind of easier to deal with.
So you feel like leveraging the charter as a resource or a tool helps guide you in making decisions to address what's being said or not address it, or the way in which you might address it?
Absolutely, because if the staff as a collective say they want to feel joy or they want to feel supported or empowered, is this gossip going to support the joy or support your colleagues feeling empowered? Because if it's venting about confusion about expectations, that's something that we can easily solve. But if we're attacking somebody's character, then that's something that we'll have to address, and that charter is a good way to communicate that.
Yes, and the charter also points us back to the solutions. Because when we write the charter, we name how we're going to experience joy. And so we arrived at those solutions together and those facts together. And so we're going to point right back and steer there. And the charter absolutely names those, it names it in advance. And we always go right back there whenever the gossip is a complaint.
And the staff composed it. It wasn't our words. That was something they put together. So there's buy-in.
Yep.
So you both speak about using the charter and that it's a living document and that it's evolving and changing, but also is like core foundation for your staff. What are ways in which you use the charter that you keep it alive and it helps guide these conversations or decisions that you make?
So we have hours here posted outside of our auditorium. It's something that we walk past every day. I know myself, I read parts of it every day. We also include it here in our weekly staff meeting agenda to focus on, but I also have staff members here from TAs to our custodian, some teachers, some certified staff. They pick one piece of that each month or quarter that they tie and they add to their staff, their emails as their signature line. And so it's just something that we've chosen to do and we've picked to focus on as individuals, but also as a group. And then we come back to that during staff meetings with our agendas.
And we also make posters. I've got it printed off, a really large poster, and it's one copy of it is in our faculty lounge because everybody goes in there, and that way it's always front of mind. And then I have another one that I can just carry around with me, and I can take it into the faculty meeting if we're meeting in the library or whatever. I can take it back and forth. And then sometimes that's a really good way to have a warm welcome, or it could be an optimistic closure for a meeting. But I'll just have staff shouting out, how did your colleagues support you in feeling this way this past week? And so they'll name, so-and-so helped me by helping me carry in and watch my kids and carry in supplies or whatever it is. They'll name that and say how it is attached to the charter.
Where do you see leaders getting pulled in toward reacting emotionally or too quickly?
I think if you're going to take it personally, if you're going to hear complaints and take it personally, then definitely you're going to react really quickly, probably too quickly, which is why it's really important always to stay curious. I think also when school leaders act really quickly is maybe when they disagree with what's being said, and instead of getting the whole picture and trying to understand why people feel the way they feel and really trying to get to the bottom of a complaint, then you're going to react really quickly too. So that's why it's really important to have a close on communication gaps and to know that the work you're doing is not disagreements is not a distraction from the work. It's part of it. It's part of your school culture, and you have to shape that too. And so it's very important for school leaders not to react quickly, because a lot of times you want to eliminate that disagreement. But healthy schools have disagreements. They have debates, and they do differ on the ways of doing things. And it's important to learn how to problem solve together as a team, as a staff.
I think it's important to be reflective. Take what you're hearing and sit with it for a little while. Even if it's uncomfortable, sit with it for a little while and then go through maybe different scenarios of how to handle it and what might be the best approach to take with your staff. Because what might work in one building might not work in a different building. So you have to go in and really be reflective of how to approach it. Because a lot of times, especially as a new leader, you might want to jump in and just change things, but it's important to sit back and watch and listen and just kind of see how things play out a little bit and then figure out the right move to make.
What do you
don't
think
take everything, so don't get defensive about everything. It's not everything's personal.
Right. What do you think gets missed when school leaders jump in quickly or respond quickly, either emotionally or solve a problem very quickly? What do you think gets missed?
I think the other person's perspective. There are so many other people, so many other roles that it takes to operate a school building, and when you react quickly, you're more than likely forgetting someone else's perspective and how that decision, this process is going to impact them and their role. And that's going to compound the frustration of people.
I think that's a really good point because their perspective is very valuable. I know a lot of times we talk about we want students to have a voice, but teachers need to have a voice too. And that's one thing when I try to remember what it felt like when I was in the classroom. I was a classroom teacher for 15 years before I became an administrator. And so I try to really rely on that because that perspective is so valuable because I might see it from a top-down situation, but I might not see it the same way that they do. And it takes all of the perspectives, all of the pieces of the puzzle to be able to find the right kind of solution.
I don't think teachers need principals to agree with every complaint either. There's been plenty of times where I've disagreed, but they do need to feel heard. They do need for us to listen.
How do you tell the difference between just random complaining or venting, as we mentioned earlier, and something that a school leader actually needs to pay attention to and spend some time with? How do you monitor and determine, oh, this is just random complaining or venting, tired, frustrated, versus, oh, wait, I really need to pay attention to this? What lessons have you learned along the way?
It makes me think of what we had said earlier. If it's something that is specific to some attacking somebody's character or something that might create division versus dealing with how we operate as a school, what the expectations are, or the general feelings of everybody. If everybody feels, or a lot of people feel burnt out, or if a lot of people feel like there's a breakdown in trust or unfairness, those are things that really need to be addressed. But if it's like a minor decision that really didn't have an impact on everybody, but they might have an opinion about it, I probably wouldn't pay as much attention to something like that.
Sure. So I wanted to ask you about informal power dynamics in a school building. So every school has informal leaders. Those are people that influence decision-making, influence others' opinions. And what should new leaders be? I'm going to redo this part. Sorry. Every school has informal leaders, whether we acknowledge it or not. Those are people that influence opinions or often decisions. What should school leaders be noticing about influence in their buildings?
I would want to notice who has that kind of influence and what direction they lean towards. Is it a positive spin on it, or is it kind of a negative spin on it? Because if it could be negative or toxic, that's something I'm going to want to get in the middle of immediately, and then see if we can make it more of a positive spin to it. I want that teamwork feeling, like we're all here for the same reason, so how can we do this work together, kind of thing. But it's important to identify who those people are, and sometimes it's people who might have been there for a really long time, or sometimes it might not have been there as long, but they have pretty strong opinions and they're vocal. So it's important to understand where they're coming from. And you're going to have some pretty good conversations. Like LaKinda has said before, like it doesn't have to always be an agreement, but being able to share perspectives is so valuable, because then I see where they're coming from, they see where I'm coming from, and we might not always agree 100%, but at least we understand, and that mutual respect will be there.
And you definitely do not want to ignore those informal leaders. You want to hear what they have to say, and you want to listen to what they're telling you and the messages that they're carrying, because a lot of times they're coming from multiple places and multiple people. And because they're an informal leader, people trust them, and so a lot of times they're hearing from other people, and they are the ones who shape other staff's opinions, and other staff seek them out. So you really want to engage them very thoughtfully. Not that you have to give them some kind of power, but they definitely need to be listened to, because they do have the understanding of what the staff is bringing to them.
So if you were to speak with a new school leader about an individual having influence kind of beyond their title, what would be signs that you would tell them to look for? How would someone know? How would a new school leader know if someone had influence with others?
think you could look at your veteran teachers, if they are a department chair or someone that's literally carrying the culture of the building, someone that other staff go to when they have questions and they want to get information. If you have a staff member who maybe speaks out more often at staff meetings, they're probably one of those culture carriers who you really want to tune in and listen. And also, I think those people, a lot of times here in the building, they're the ones that come to me and they'll say, hey, I have something I want to talk to you about.
Right.
And so I really listen when they're coming because I know I'm hearing from multiple people at once.
Mm-hmm. And another thing to notice is what do they do in their free time? Their planning period or their lunch break, where are they? If they are in their room alone all the time, then they probably keep to themselves a lot. But if they're out and about and in other classrooms or with another group of teachers, then they're probably part of that pulse. Definitely people who are a little bit more outspoken and who bring any kind of concerns or anything like that to us are usually the ones that are those unspoken leaders.
I think so much of today's conversation makes me think of the McCrell responsibility of situational awareness.
Yes.
Which I'll read the definition, is aware of the details and undercurrents in running of the school and uses this information to address current and potential problems. How are you both intentional about your situational awareness? Is there something in particular that you do or you don't do to make sure that you're remaining situationally aware in your leadership?
One of the things that I think of is I do not spend very much time in my office. I am out among kids and teachers all day. I'm in hallways, I'm in the cafeteria, I'm in and out of classrooms, and I think that helps me stay more aware. If I were in my office, I wouldn't know what was going on in the building. And I rely on those unspoken leaders to share some things if they feel like it's necessary to share some things. Whatever might arise, they'll come and let me know. And so sometimes people act a different way in front of me than they do behind me. But so just having those people that you can trust, they'll come to you with things. But I think visibility is huge. Just being out there and noticing things and seeing a change in the dynamics of how things are playing out.
Definitely that, and I think even the students here at Hamilton would tell you, I'll see you in the classrooms, the hallways, and the cafeteria, because I say that every single day. And also, I think that the way that we can do that also is just having those very intentional interactions with every single person, because staff, too, it's like having that favorite kiddo in your classroom or your favorite child as a parent. They will see that too. So you need to have interactions with everybody in the building that are intentional and not just a selected few. And you need to, that's how trust is built. And I think when you're repeating those actions and you're building that with people, then doing it professionally, then people have a respect for that here in the building, and they see that you are also a team player and you're all in for everyone. But the students too. The students are the bottom line. If it's best for students, then always lead with that.
So it also really speaks to me that you're having to manage leading with credibility. You never want your credibility to be in question or damaged. What are some early mistakes that leaders make that damage their credibility when it comes to reacting to noise or reading the signal from their staff?
I think one of the things is if you take everything too personally, you just react emotionally every time there's an issue or somebody disagrees with you, then that trust will be broken.
I think about like becoming defensive, arguing back with people about why you're right and this is the way it has to be,
Right.
you know, really damages credibility and makes a leader look insecure.
Absolutely. And then just not listening, I think goes with that, is staying calm so that you can communicate clearly, but also responding consistently. So especially when tensions are high or you're in a lockdown situation, you have to be the calm and respond that way. But definitely you don't want to be defensive when you're responding.
I think another way that a leader could lose credibility is if they participate in the same thing that they're trying to put a stop to. Gossips or something like that. You can't
Yeah.
participate in that.
Yeah, because why would I trust you and come to you with anything and I know that you also gossip?
Definitely. That would damage credibility. What do you think strong situational awareness actually looks like in practice? If you could describe a school leader who is demonstrating strong situational awareness, what might you see or hear from that school leader?
Would you mind to read the definition again?
Yeah, absolutely. Situational awareness is being aware of the details and the undercurrents of running the school, using the information to address current and potential problems. So if a school leader is doing that effectively, what does it actually look like in practice? What do you see them doing? What do you hear them saying?
I think that an effective school leader in that regard will be a part of shaping their school's culture. I think that you will hear them not necessarily trying to eliminate disagreements, but focusing on a way to have healthy conversations. They'll be offering ways to let everyone offer their opinions, even if opinions differ. I think that you'll also find them building ways to maintain trust and professionalism amongst the staff members, and you'll also most definitely see them keeping the focus on students.
Lori, is there anything else you would add or anything else you can think of?
The umbrella of situational awareness is just so big and broad because I feel like it applies to the academic side, it applies to students, it applies to adults, the culture, the climate. And I just think that an effective leader has to really keep a pulse on everything. And I don't mean micromanage everything. Teachers hate the micromanagement of it. But I think that the more you're around everything and you're feeling that energy and you're just aware of things as they come up, and whether it has to do with students or academics or teachers and staff, whatever it is, I feel like just being aware. That's why I don't want to sit in my office all day. I want to be out and about and in the building and be a part of what's going on. I'm very actively involved, and I wouldn't ever ask a staff member to do something that I'm not willing to jump in and do right alongside of them. So just doing the work alongside each other and being just helps me stay aware to those undercurrents. And I can see a change in dynamics of a team if something has happened recently. I'm going to pick up on that a lot faster just because I'm around it so much.
I agree. I think visibility and being out and about in the hallways and in the classrooms is really key. I think school leaders are taking in enormous amounts of information constantly. You're just constantly filtering information and looking for trends, like a radar, looking for trends. And I think that informs decisions a lot. Sometimes I think it's conscious, but sometimes I think it's unconscious as well. When
Right.
you finally pause and you think, oh, wait, I saw this a couple of times today, and it sparks that curiosity. I'm going to be mindful of that tomorrow as I'm back out in the field working with people.
Absolutely.
So, how did leading together shape the way you think about culture and staff dynamics now as principals?
We were leading together when it was COVID. And we thought, if we can survive COVID, we can do anything because that was just a stressful time. And we moved our offices to where we were in the same room. We were in a conference room, and I would sit at one end of the table and she sat on the other end of the table. And that way we can just talk through and plan through everything together. But we added a lot of joy. We had a lot of fun. We laughed a lot, but it's kind of what got us through those. But it caused us to be intentional because our staff was definitely stressed. It was a very big transition to move to teaching on Chromebooks and having to be separate from each other, especially when we had such a close staff. And now we have to stay separated from each other. So LaKinda and we were trying to support teachers with their instruction, but also trying to find ways to promote wellness among our staff because we were really worried about burnout, the exhaustion, the workload. So we spent a lot of time working on just wellness with our staff as well.
It also helped as parents, a lot of the things that our students were doing at home with their families, but also put an educator's lens on what that was like as the students doing it. And so we would bring that to the table, and things that I would figure out at home working with my own children, we could bring that and teach our own teachers, hey, teach the kids how to do this, because we walked through this together and it was kind of tricky. And started creating videos, student-made videos. And then Lori and I started making videos of tutorials and things that we could share out with our teachers and our students and our parents, so that they could grasp this whole new Zoom. No one heard of Zoom before then, and they were going to learn online. And so we were working really intentionally to communicate very clearly, and it got some things across that we just never had to do before. So just to make it very accessible for everyone.
And we tried to celebrate teachers, because even after we came back from COVID and everything, that was another thing that we had taken as feedback. We had heard that teachers really valued being able to celebrate teachers. And LaKinda had started this affirmations box, basically having students write out affirmations about their teachers. And during our assemblies, we would celebrate students, but at the end, we would go and celebrate a few teachers at a time. That way we could give them all their own little award and stuff at the end. And I think those kind of things, other wellness activities and challenges we did throughout the year really helped.
Home visits. We were doing home visits for students to celebrate students, and then we started doing home visits to celebrate our staff. So nothing better than your principal and your assistant principal shows up at your front door and is like, hey, we've missed you so much, and just to give them that greeting. But it was a stressful time, and you don't see those people for so long. We really just wanted to, again, put our faces in front of them and make it very personable.
Underlying message is always, we're here to support you.
Yes.
Nice. So what is one move that actually improves your credibility when tension or stress starts to run really high in the building or with the staff? What's something that builds your credibility as a school leader?
I try to always be receptive to listen to what they're saying, and then be reflective, and then be transparent. And if I need to explain why something was done that way, then I will. All of that, listening to their perspective and sharing my perspective if needed. But I think it's important to be reflective and transparent.
And with that, it's okay to say, I understand why this feels frustrating to you. And I understand there's a concern here for workload, or I know that this may not be the best thing right now, and that it's going to impact you this way. Help me understand what else I need to know. I think when we try to minimize new things or new implementations and just take that away, then we actually cause more damage than good. And so we really need to, it's important that we are listening to what our staff feels like the impact is for them. I think we said that earlier. That really helps us to stand out when they feel like the decisions that are being made, yes, we understand how it impacts you, but they're more likely to support that when they've managed to get across to us the difficult parts of it.
So we have a signature question that we ask every school leader that comes on to the podcast. And our question is, what leadership move did you learn too late or you wish you'd learned earlier? What leadership move did you learn too late or you wish you'd learned earlier?
It is a good question. I guess understanding that you won't always make everybody happy, and that's okay.
How does that impact the way you approach building culture or trust now that you've learned that lesson? You won't always make everyone happy.
I still want to be authentic. I want to bring my authentic self every day. And we frame everything with what's best for kids. That's a commitment that we, like our school, is committed to that whole child approach. And if you're here at Lewis and Clark, that means you have that commitment as well. And we really work to stay true to our vision. And that means we're all here for the same thing. And it might show up in different ways. And you might not always be happy. And that's okay. But we're here for kids.
Nice. LaKinda, what are you thinking about?
I think for me, and this is something I've really put some thought into, is sending an email for something that needs to be communicated in person first or explained first, because you're going to have questions, and it could be something as simple as a schedule change to a day. If you can foresee it and you know that it's coming up, it's always better to explain that first in person before sending an email, because you're going to have so many questions that come with that, but also it will cause, it just throws a wrench in people's day. It will cause some inconsistency for people, or you just difficulties for people. And so if you're going to be messaging something, and that's really simple, just the schedule change, but if you're going to be messaging something that you're going to need everyone on board for, it's always best to explain that and go over that in person before sending that in an email. Would be my advice.
Nice. Awesome. Well, the technical responsibility here is situational awareness, understanding culture and dynamics of a school. But the 22nd responsibility is navigating the tension between reacting to noise and reading the signal. Because not every complaint needs a reaction, but every pattern is telling you something as a school leader. What a strong leader learns over time is that influence rarely follows an organizational chart. Leadership isn't about controlling every conversation. It's about understanding what those conversations reveal. So, try this next week. Identify 2 informal teacher leaders in your building, not based on title, but based on influence. Who do people listen to? Who shapes the tone of conversations? Who do others follow when uncertainty shows up? Because if we want a stronger culture and stronger credibility, it starts with understanding how influence actually moves through a school. Lori and LaKinda, I want to thank you both for bringing honesty and wisdom to a topic every school leader experiences, but not every school leader talks about openly. And to everyone listening, culture is not just what happens in meetings, it's what people say, believe, and reinforce when leadership leaves the room. We'll see you next time on the 22nd responsibility.